guys, welcome back to We Watch the Movie. Mike here with a special treat for you guys today. ScreamThrilogy.com, follow them on Twitter, was nice enough to show up to us like Randy in a VHS tape in Scream 3 with all the rules, even after he was murdered to death in a senseless bloodbath in the back of a van in Scream 2. What I'm trying to say is that they delivered unto us the Scream 2022 script. Now, I don't know how early in the process this script was. It's first script, the closest to the movie. A lot of it is filmed the exact same as the movie, but there's also a lot of differences, which we will gladly get into now. Obviously, Scream 5 spoilers are ahead, so don't watch this if you haven't seen Scream. But let's get the fuck into it. Slicing and dicing. Why did I sound like the Dr. Pepper little dude?
You deserve a delicious Dr. Pepper. I do?
Okay, the first difference between the script and the movie is that Tara and Amber are actually girlfriends. You see, Amber's actually texting to Tara to try to get her to come over, but she's also like, hey, you're gonna have to do better than that. Tara actually takes a booby pic and sends it to Amber, and then Amber's like, actually, this is Ghostface. You just sent your boobies to a mass murderer, which, you know, turns out to be Amber anyways, but still, it's gotta be embarrassing to accidentally, at least in her mind, she thought that she sent her booby pic to a mass murderer that wasn't her girlfriend. You get where I'm going with this, right? We don't need like a booby pic to mass murderer explain video. For the most part, the rest of the opening scene plays out pretty much the exact same way, except for this. When Ghostface reaches up to stab down, instead of scream, you know what the title of this was in this script? Scream Forever. Was actually, I guess that was, they were thinking about that being the title to this movie at some point. Now the script is called Parkside because that was just the shooting name for the movie. Kind of like Halloween Ends is going to be Cave Dweller, Halloween Kills was Mob Rules. This was Parkside. The script guy at least thought that the movie should be called Scream Forever, which I think is kind of fucking dope and would have made a lot of sense. Now, since they went back and made this such a requel, I guess it makes more sense that it's Scream now, but hey, maybe the next one could be called Scream Forever. Who knows? By the way, I cannot find a Scream, like I thought, in my mind, I'm like, I'd rather have subtitles for Scream at this point than numbers, right? But I can't think of any subtitles I like. So do me a favor, guys, comment down below with the best subtitle you can think of for the next Scream movie. And whoever Jay and I think is the best one, we'll actually send you something. I think we have a couple extra Ghostface masks. We'll sign it for you if you want us to dirty it up with a shitty signature. We'll sign it for you and send it to you. Whoever has the best one wins. So comment down below. What do you guys think? What is the best Scream subtitle you can think of? Scream what? For the next Scream movie. Okay, a couple tiny little bitty differences here that are just kind of window dressing, but they're worth noting. When you see Sam and Richie at the bowling alley that they work out, in the script, they actually work at a Costco and work on the loading dock. Also, they're popping Xanax on their way to Woodsboro. He's like, hey, you want a Xanax? And she's like, you fucking know it. You know, you can't blame her going back to with everything that's going on. The scene where there's an inhaler, where Amber asks Tara, she's like, you sure you don't need your inhaler? Which is ultimately what leads them back to Stu's house, what the killers were counting on happening. It's an inhaler in the movie, but in this script, it's her dad's necklace. I like the inhaler idea way better. It just makes more sense that you would go back for something like that you really need to survive, rather than a necklace, no matter how sentimental. But then again, Christopher Walken did hold a watch in his butt for like 20 years or some shit in Pulp Fiction, so.
In one place he knew he could hide something, his ass.
And moving on next to the scene at the bar. Now, there's a whole lot of stuff that's different in this part. This is where things start to really get fucking wild and crazy butt sauce. First off, we learn that that bar that they're standing in, which is not necessarily a difference, they just didn't really explain it in the movie. The part of the bar that they're standing in is actually a part of the bar that teens are allowed to hang out in but not drink. But it's just connected, I guess, to a regular bar, which I actually appreciate, because in a lot of movies, you see teens just walking in and drinking beer and you're like, what the fuck? But we also find out in this scene that Wes was actually Tara's boyfriend, and she left Wes for Amber. That's right, he got totally fucking rossed from Friends. Now, during the scene, we also are shown Tara and Sam's mom, which were not shown in the movie. She's listed as a 40-year-old guzzling white wine in the bar area and falling off of her stool. So if that gives you any idea where her character's going. Another scene that happens is the scene where Kyle Gallner, Vince, pulls out the knife on Chad. In the movie, they just go real quick, hey, you get out of here, and then they cut to him pissing. In the script, this is where you get introduced to Dewey again. He walks out up to Vince and he says, hey Vince, why don't you put that thing away, leave these kids alone, and come have a drink with me, because I'm Dewey and I'm getting hammered in a bar. And Vince goes, fuck you, hits him in the side of the head, and then Dewey immediately goes down, and Vince starts stomping Dewey and beating the fuck out of him. The bartender yells that he's called the police, and then we finally cut to the scene where Vince is pissing. That scene pretty much goes the exact same way, except for he's driving a truck and he doesn't die there. He has a completely different death scene. He gets in his car. We find him miles up the road, and that they paint the picture really well for Vince's death because it sounds kind of freaky, actually. He realizes he has a flat tire and that his brake line has been pulled, and he thinks it's Dewey, so he's cussing him the whole time, talking about how he's going to kill him. But they paint the picture really well because his car breaks down and he's in the middle of a 2-lane road with wide open fields on each side of him, which just sounds creepy in my mind if I'm thinking about it. But he gets out, he gets underneath the car, and what's really cool is these boots walk up, and Vince can see the boots, and he's like, fuck off. And then you see the gown, Ghostface sparkly ass fucking gown, drop down into frame, which would be a badass shot. It reminds me of all the bathroom shots in Scream. Vince at this point is underneath the truck working on it, and Ghostface stabs him in the thigh, and then as Vince tries to get out, Ghostface cuts his forearm extremely deeply, apparently, kicks the jack out from underneath the car, and which falls on his face, fucking up his face a little bit. And then Vince can hear the truck start, and he's like, oh, what the fuck? He crawls out from underneath the truck, and the camera pops up, and he looks in the driver's seat, which is where you would expect Ghostface to be, but Ghostface isn't there. Ghostface, surprise, is in the bed of the truck and stabs him as the script reads, word for word, buries his knife in Vince's face. In his fucking face. Question for you guys. Do you like the death that I just explained there to you from the script, or do you like Vince's death in the movie better when Ghostface just popped out and booped him real quick? Now, this entire scene leads to an extra scene with Dewey and Judy because Vince's body's dead right after he beats the shit out of Dewey. So obviously this makes Dewey a suspect. So Judy brings him in, and Dewey's sitting there with he's holding, an ice pack to his head because he just got the shit kicked out of him, which, by the way, I don't like. I'm glad that they didn't keep him getting his ass kicked in there. Asking him about what's going on here, and Dewey has a great line where he says, she's like, you know why you're here, right? And he's like, yeah, because they found Vince dead, the guy that treated my face like a human pinata. And then he says, couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. And then Judy gets upset. She's like, what happened to you, Dewey? You used to be such a nice guy. And he's like, I'm still nice, I'm just tired. And he finally tells her, look, I have an alibi, my neighbor saw me come home. To which she's very relieved about, because Judy doesn't want to arrest Dewey, or doesn't want to think that he actually would do that. It's just that Dewey's been so fucked up lately. And this is one thing that the script, there's threads of this throughout the script that they don't mention in the movie. And that's because David Arquette mentioned in a recent interview that one of the things he didn't appreciate about the script that he didn't like originally was that Dewey was such an alcoholic. There's multiple threads in this about his drinking that's not in the movie, and he said in the interview, he was like, I just told them that, like, I don't feel like Dewey would become an alcoholic. It just doesn't feel like his way of dealing with things. You'll notice in this script that there's a scene where he mentions it several more times. When him and Gail have the one-on-one on the side of the street, he mentions she smells alcohol on him, and she's like, are you drunk? And he's like, every day. They took out that. They took out the bar scene that I mentioned before. They took out a scene where he's on the way to the hospital with Samantha, and he reaches in the glove compartment to grab a flask of whiskey, and his hands shake, and he puts it back instead of drinking it, like kind of a final act of self-discipline before, his ultimate demise. Also, if you notice in the movie, when they show him in his trailer, you can see that he's pouring something into his coffee, but the camera zooms in on his face, you don't see it. They cut that out a little bit, and they kind of left it up to you to decide. And it's also mentioned at one point in the movie that he crawled into a bottle. But for the most part, a lot of the alcohol references to Dewey have been pulled out of the movie. That were actually in the script. There's an extra line when Sam and Richie go to Dewey's trailer to try to get him to come help them, where he looks out when he's looking out the door and talking to him, where he's like, "You're being an asshole." And I kind of wish they would have left that in because it reads funny in the script. There's also a couple shots in the movie where he's looking at a picture of Gail. And it's weird that they switched this, but in the script, the shot of the picture he's looking at is actually of Tatum, his sister. That's something that's different. And when he calls Neve Campbell Sydney, when he calls Sydney to let her know that the killer's back and he's doing things and ask her not to come to Woodsboro, we actually don't see Sydney running on a bridge. We see Sydney at home. They show Detective Mark from Scream 3. They don't mention him as him specifically in the script, but it's still him. They show him helping get the kids ready for school and her getting the kids ready for school, so that was a big difference. And I wonder if they switched that just because Patrick Dempsey would have cost too much for just that one quick scene, or if there was a scheduling difference or something like that. But yeah, in the script they actually show Mark, Patrick Dempsey's character, for a quick second. I don't think he even has any lines. There's just a moment where David says, hey, how's Mark? And she says, oh, I think I'll keep him. We move on to the rules scene at the house where Dewey meets up with them and decides that he's going to help them. The only differences here in the conversation is that we actually see Chad and Mindy's father, Carlos, who's just talking about how his son's going to be a great football player and his daughter's going to be this great director. Just a little tiny scene, couple lines of dialogue that they pulled out of the script for whatever reason. But after this scene, a couple differences. When Sam storms out angry after everybody's saying that she's the killer, she actually goes to her house and she sees her mom once again. Susan, who we see not in the movie at all, I don't believe, shows up in a taxi at 4 p.m. just wasted off her ass. And she's like, hey, don't fucking judge me. And then she drunkenly tells Sam that she's probably the one doing this because she's probably just like her dad, and she starts crying, asking her why she hurt her daughter, which if you imagine your own mother saying that to you, that's gotta fuck you up a buttload. So when she gets back in the car after this scene happens, that's when she has her second vision of Billy in the backseat of her car. And in the script, he actually says a couple lines that weren't in the movie, and I get why they took them out because they're kind of cringy a little bit, where he's like, why are you gonna let people do this? He's like, when Sydney's mom fucked my dad, I cut her up like a frog in biology class. And I was like, and I'm pretty sure he didn't say that in the movie. I could be wrong. Again, if there's any actually people out there, just please read the comments before you add the 17,000th actually if I am wrong about any of this, but I'm pretty sure that he didn't have that line in the movie. And the only other difference there is that instead of almost getting a wreck like she did in the movie, in the script, she actually wrecks her car and her airbags come out and all that shit, which is a very smart thing to take out of the movie because wrecks are pretty fucking expensive to film. So why do it if you can just have her get scared and stop at a stoplight? So we move on from here to Judy's death scene, which is pretty much the exact same, the way that she gets it when he pops out in front of the door. But Wes's death scene is another scene that's completely different than it is in the movie. In this one, he comes down, his mom's still dead outside in the broad daylight, which is pretty fucking wild. But in this scene, instead of them doing the, oh, jump scare's coming, which I didn't really love in the movie, the alarms in the house are going off one by one. So like the window downstairs will be like alarm fault, second window, and it'll go to that, but then it'll be alarm fault door. And he'll go to that, and it seems like he's leading him to his mom, but then that's when Ghostface pops out. But instead of the awesome Dick Dangler, just like slow neck jab death scene that we got for Wes, in this, he actually just runs into another room, gets into a safe, gets Judy's gun, her backup gun, but Ghostface pops out, forces the gun back on him, and shoots him in the head, and then that's the end of Wes. So definitely one of those scenes that was way better ultimately with the gag that they did, the visual effects gag in the movie, than it was in the script. Something cool that happens at Judy and Wes's crime scene is that Sam and Mindy are talking to each other, and they actually reference Halloween Kills in this scene. Earlier in the movie, when Wes is like, my mom was in those movies, and Mindy was like, nobody gives a fuck about the sequels. When his mom ends up dead, Sam asks, she's like, I thought he didn't give a fuck about the sequels. And Mindy says, well, word for word, she says, maybe this is more of a greatest hits type thing where he's cramming in every previous movie connection he can find, like in Halloween Kills. Which would have been fucking awesome if they kept that line in there just as like a super meta, because these are both really current movies. Another line that was taken out that I'm actually thankful was taken out because I felt like it kind of felt like nasty towards Wes Craven, which is the opposite of what you want to do with this movie. There's a line where Richie's watching the Stab movies and he tells Sam, he's like, you know that there's not a single black person in the first movie? And he's like, and then they hire 2 famous black people to be in Scream 2 and they kill him in the opening act. And he's like, and then apparently gay people don't even exist until the 4th movie. I'm glad they took that out. I get what they're going for, the super meta thing. And I understand that, like, but for this movie, like, that felt way off. Because obviously we know that's not the kind of person that Wes Craven was, but I think like that paints the wrong picture or whatever. Glad that line was taken out. Aha, and for those who were not fans of the following hospital scene because it was so empty in the hospital and there was only one cop there who got killed off so easily, they actually explained that a little bit better in the script also, because in the script they mentioned specifically that they closed off an entire wing of the hospital for Tara. And they mentioned that Judy and Wes's deaths were meant to create a diversion, which is why you see Officer Vincent, who, by the way, is the dude that does this dance in Hot Rod. I don't know if any of you guys know that. Was like, you don't bring anything to the team. He's like, do I? Don't I? Boom, boom, boom. The guy like throws papers in people's faces. He's that guy. But anyways, that's why they mention, hey, you're supposed to be watching my sister. Ghostface specifically got the cops away by killing Judy and West. That's why he did it. So I thought that was interesting. Painted some extra color on that. Oh. 3 walls will be okay. 3 walls will save the day. Okay, so on to the worst part of the fucking movie that I hated so goddamn much. Dewey's death. God, I hate it. Fuck, every time I think about it, it makes me sick, Steven. Fuck you! A lot of it happens the exact same way, and unfortunately, I was hoping to find some hints to my theory that Stu was actually the one who murdered him, and Stu's been running this behind the scenes, and he wanted that kill for himself, which is why Ghostface looks so different in that scene. And there's something to that we will talk about very soon in this, but there's no real hints to that in the script. But the only thing they really add on to this is that the screenwriter's very excited about this scene. When he is all of us when he's writing this. When Ghostface gets attacked, or when Dewey gets attacked by Ghostface, the script literally reads, "Oh no, not Dewey!" And then when Dewey shoots Ghostface and knocks him against that case or whatever, it's like, this should be immensely satisfying. Fuck yeah! Like the script read as us watching it. You know what I mean? Even the first time he got stabbed, the script was like, and you're thinking, oh no, it's fine. But then he gets stabbed the second time. And you're like, oh no, he'll be okay. But then literally exactly what I said in my review of how I reacted to watching this is what the script says, which blew my fucking mind. And there's a really nice like camaraderie happening between the director and the script writers here, because literally when Dewey walks back out to go shoot him in the head, the script reads, Dewey walks back in like an old Western sort of way, starts to reload his pistol, and the glass is cracking beneath his boots. And they literally show that like shot for shot. It just seems like the script writers and the directors were just fucking like this on this movie, and it's beautiful to see. One small difference in the scene, Ghostface in the script actually has the modulator and is talking through it, but it makes a lot of sense that they brought in the neck piece, because A, it's a cool piece of new equipment, and B, it makes sense. It's not like Ghostface has hoodie pockets. It's like, hang on, I'm gonna put the knife down, grab the fucking, hey Dewey, it's been an honor, yeah, fucking got my knife out, fuck you. Chad is supposed to die in this script. Now that's something we talked about in one of our Scream updates, that Radio Silence said once they met him and they tested with him, they actually liked him a lot and decided to keep him alive. Wish that would have happened with Dewey. Fuck. But, you know, they decided to keep him alive. So, but in the script, he dies in a different way, too. When they're doing the whole, he's looking for Liv to try to make it up to her sexually. In this scene, you see a boot covered in leaves, and he thinks that Liv's under there waiting to bang. But it's actually Ghostface, who has covered himself in fucking leaves. And then when Chad gets to him, Ghostface stabs him in the stomach. And, but in that moment, Chad does get a bunch of shots on Ghostface. Like, Chad hits him with the candlestick and then beats the shit out of Ghostface's midsection. But then when Chad turns around to walk off, Ghostface jumps on his back, slits his throat. Good night. Have a good fucking day. Get you a Coke on the way out. Nice to see you at the party. But it's another thing that makes it impossible to me that Amber's the killer, because Richie is in the car. Chad can see the car pulling up as a kind of a nod to the first movie where Casey can see her parents as she's being killed. He can see help as he gets his throat slashed and he's crawling to it. So that's Richie. So this is supposed to be Amber that literally took just like multiple shots in the midsection and got the shit kicked out of her from this gigantic football player, and then just got right up afterwards, jumped on his back and slit his throat. Doesn't make sense to me. Speaking of which, the script literally mentions this problem, and I don't know why. I don't know if it has something to do with anything or if it's just a matter of stance, but they took this out of the script and did not put it into the movie for a reason, and that is the Mary Sue situation. Later on in the script, when we get to Randy and Amber doing their whole monologue about why they're doing all this, they literally mention, I'm going to read this to you word for word. He says, after all we've given this franchise, they're going to do 3 killers, no legacy characters, a fucking Mary Sue who can apparently whip a 200-pound guy's ass with no training. We deserve better. Do what, though? They actually mention in his monologue what this movie ends up doing. Like, how dare they Mary Sue us, which Mary Sue, if you don't know, is a character, typically a heroine that they, like, small, makes no sense that they can do all this super badass stuff, but they're somehow unstoppable. And I just thought that was wild that they actually mentioned in the script one of the main problems with the movie, if it turns out that Amber was the one doing this, lending credence to my belief that it was actually Stu who's running things, and he has these kids doing stuff for him, I'm gonna make a whole video about that. I know some people disagree, but I think we might find out in Scream 6 that it was actually Stu who killed Dewey and did a little bit of this dangleberrying himself. But also happening during this monologue is Richie is a little meaner to Sid, and he mentions to her at one point, like, hey, isn't it fucked up that if you just open your legs a little bit quicker, like Billy had wanted, Sam would have never existed, which is just a mean-ass thing to say to somebody. But pointing out that Billy cheated on her solely because of her whole, would you accept the PG-13 relationship situation, and that's the only reason Sam even exists as a human being, right in front of Sam, which is a little mean and fucked up. You know, like kind of like killing everybody is, but you know what I mean. Big question I have for you here, and this is another thing that I can't exactly remember for sure happened or not in the theater. I remember in the movie watching it during the monologue that Amber, when she explains her part in all this, I remember her saying that, you know, it's a small fucking town. That's how I knew Sam, but that's all I really remember her saying. Now tell me you guys, and again, read the comments to make sure 72,000 people haven't already corrected me if I'm wrong, please. But the quoted line in the script, when Sam asked Amber how she knew that Billy Loomis was her dad, she says, about your father, it's a small town. My uncle went to school with all of them. He knew Billy was banging your mom behind Sid's back. You do a little math, that adds up to 9 months, bingo. I remember the small town comment, but I don't remember her saying her uncle, Amber's uncle specifically, was friends with Billy and Stu and told her about all this. Now, if that's not in the movie, why was it taken out? And either way, who the fuck is her uncle? How is that going to tie into things later on? Because you know it's going to be, because everyone's a suspect. That's some really interesting stuff to think about when it comes to this script for me. Either way, whether it's in the movie or not. So finally, when it comes down to the big fight sequence, there's a lot of extra little fight sequences, little things that happen in the script that aren't in the movie, in the fights between Gail and Sydney and Tara and Sam and Amber and Richie. Just little fight moves and choreography stuff that I won't get into. Choreography is not a word when you mention it like that. Choreography is. But one of the main differences at the end is right before Sam is about to just murder the living fuck shit out of Richie. In the movie, he says something to the effect of, oh, but what about my ending? And she says, it's coming, and then she slashes his throat. In the script, he says, but I can't die. Who's going to be the villain in the sequel? And then she leans down and she goes, that's the sequel's problem. Cuts his fucking throat. And that's a meta as fuck thing in itself, not only for the next Scream movie, in all actuality, what's going to happen next, but more so for movies, horror sequels, like specifically a Halloween franchise. Halloween did that in 4, 5, 6, and 7. Like they all fuck the next movie with their ending. But I just thought that was neat and I liked it. And that's fucking it, my friends. That is all the differences I could find between the script and the movie. Again, shout out to screamtheology.com. What did you guys think about the moments brought up in this script? I want to know all your thoughts below, and I love all your fucking faces, and I want to sleep with you all softly into the night. Thanks for clicking like. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for subscribing. We love your fucking faces, and we'll see you guys soon, Sydney.